are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win Show. Welcome to the Evolve to Win Show. I'm Paul Christie.
I'm Heather Christie, and we're so excited to be here with you on the very first episode of this new podcast for us called Evolve to Win.
Yes, and I'm already very frustrated.
Oh my God, what a great way to start a podcast, right? Why don't you tell us why you're frustrated?
Because I struggle with our topic, which is around growth. And so this is our very first podcast, and we were just having a discussion about growth, and you started to get all over me about like how important it is for people to continue growing. Do you want to stay in the same place? So sell me on this whole thing.
Okay, good. So what you're going to recognize with this show, this show is really based on 12 years of us working with executives and entrepreneurs and helping them to grow in every aspect of their business, of their lives. And the reason that is our primary focus is because we're in the fastest paced business environment that anyone's ever seen before. And so you have to be way more intentional about your growth right now if you want to stay ahead of the curve.
Why?
Because do you recognize how fast things are changing? Like our business, when you think about the business environment right now and what's happening, think about what's happening with all of our clients. If you think about it, first of all, you know the generalized principle, you're either growing or you're dying. Right?
I do, yes.
This is true.
I am aware of that.
So, talking about growth may not be that sexy of a topic, but when you think about the reality of it, what I was saying to you right before we got on the show is, do you want to stay exactly where you are? Like if you lived the rest of your life exactly where you are today without evolving any aspect of your life.
No, but I'm going to evolve naturally, so it doesn't matter.
No. Okay, this is my point. It is not enough to evolve naturally. What does that even mean? There's no intention behind that. You have to get so intentional about growth right now because if you don't, you're going to be so far behind. So what's natural, like evolving naturally? What does that even look like?
Here's the thing is, okay, maybe we've been in the business coaching, training, executive coaching, leadership business for over 12 years now.
Yes. And
when we started down this path in 2005, is that when it was? Mm-hmm, 2005. Yeah, you know what? I probably wasn't, reading too many books. I remember in sales, driving around with my Zig Ziglar CD in my car. And that's really the only way that you would really get your personal development through the years, and is just popping it in your cassette. That's how most people did. There weren't, YouTube wasn't around at the time. You didn't have podcasts. You didn't have video that was, other than on VHSs or on DVDs, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was the only way to get it. So maybe what it is that I actually am, and I have been on this growth path for a long time. I just don't recognize it for what it is.
So why don't we just talk about that for a moment? So This is great to just start with a personal story, okay? So when you think about, let's go pre-2005, before we started this coaching business, what was your, quote, intentional growth path? So you were in commercial sales, mm-hmm. and you were in the position of manufacturer's rep, right? Mm-hmm. You had a regional territory for a company called Ingersoll. Now, in that role, how much were you focused on developing yourself personally and professionally?
I wasn't.
How's that working for you?
I don't know. You wanted to date me at that time. So how was that working for you?
Yeah, okay. I guess that's a really good point there. Well, you and I were on very similar non-growth paths when we first met, which is probably in part why we were attracted to each other, yes. Right? So I was a practicing attorney in Chicago. Paul was in commercial sales. We met each other through mutual friends. And we were both going about the same direction, which is we were just interested in having some fun. We were in our 20s. So then though, we had a defining moment, at least I would say for myself, I had a defining moment in my life where I read this most amazing book that a random stranger gave to me on the plane. And it was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it was, I got to say, the first book that I read cover to cover that was something other than a fiction book outside of law school. So I read that.
I mean, it is still a great book.
It's a phenomenal book.
You talk about taking something that's so complex like finances and investing and breaking it down into just this real easy to understand, it was just book and message. It was awesome.
Well, you read it like immediately after I read it. So yeah, some guy is sitting next to me on a plane, finishes his book, literally turns to me and hands it to me on the airplane and says, "Here, you're going to need this. It's going to change your life." And so I take the book from him and I look at the cover and it says Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I thought, that sounds kind of stupid. But what I couldn't mistake is he was so genuine when he handed this book to me. He was so really specific that it was going to change my life. He believed it. And so I opened it and I started sort of reading just out of respect for the fact that he had given this to me. And I got to tell you, I got hooked immediately. I read it the entire flight home. I read it like from cover to cover, sat down, like dropped everything in the front hall, went and sat on my couch, finished the book. And I remember that moment when I closed that book and I made a commitment to myself. And that commitment was back in 2001. That commitment was that I was going to take 100% responsibility going forward for my success in life, for all my results in life. And you're like, oh, well, that sounds like a really wise, conclusion that she came to, Heather. Not sure you needed a book to figure that out. But I can't tell you how meaningful that blinding flash of the obvious was for me, because what I had been doing up until then without my knowledge, I wasn't aware of it, is that I was blaming different people in my world for any lack of progress that I perceived or any lack of happiness that I perceived.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's just because most people do it doesn't make it right. So, both Paul and I actually began, I would say really, truly began the journey of personal and professional development starting after the reading of that book. And we also committed to start attending seminars and really learning from anyone we could learn from. And when you think about who we were back in 2001 compared to who we are now in 2018, I think only upon reflection year after year do you really get present to how different the mindset is.
Yeah, and I feel like you've been dragging me all
kicking and screaming, right?
I don't necessarily think kicking and screaming, but just the challenge I have with the whole personal development and growth thing is for me, I mean, at that time, yes. When we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then we ended up doing Landmark program, that was kind of mind-blowing for me. And but at that point it happened so quickly, like things changed immediately. But then this whole growth path, from 2005 all the way till now, it just seems like it's been taking too long.
Well, but I think part of the mindset is
like I don't even know where the end is.
There's no end. Like that's the point.
I want it to end sometime.
Why? Because you don't enjoy what part of growth?
Well, I think probably because what can happen is you can get caught up in the whole learning, the whole growing, the whole education portion of it, and then not necessarily put it into action and get the results that you want to get.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the challenges that I've had for a long time is just, I've been reading books, I've been watching. I mean, now it's just so overwhelming, the amount of information's out there. I mean,
I agree with you there.
Everybody has.
What is it? Over 240,000 results. I think when you look up leadership books on Amazon, the marketplace is crowded now. There's no question about it. And where do I go for my growth? But that's exactly why I'm saying we've got to be more intentional about our growth. It's not like it used to be. It's not like you could just pop in a Zig Ziglar CD while you're driving around.
You still can.
Well, you still can because he was awesome.
From 2012.
I
don't even cars have CDs
CD
in
player.
them.
I don't think so. But you can get it on an MP3.
Yeah.
So
you can listen on
YouTube
your phone.
it. So it's not that you can't do those things. Of course, you should be doing those things. Like I take my time every single morning when I'm getting ready. I take my time to get ready, and I usually takes about 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. And I'm always listening to a podcast, or I'm listening to an episode from, Jim Rohn, or from, like it could be a Zig Ziglar, a Les Brown. It doesn't matter, right? But somebody who inspires me. Earl Nightingale is one of my big ones, and a lot of these guys aren't even around anymore. They've never met them. But when you think about, okay, so let's talk about what's going on in our environment right now. The most recent Gallup poll gives us the percentage engagement levels of our United States workforce. And they're staggering. Like they're really upsetting, right? Only 33% of our workforce is actually engaged, according to this most recent Gallup poll. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about the fact that we only have about 33% engaged, the rest of the population is either disengaged or actively disengaged. And those two...
I know why.
Why? Okay, tell me why.
Because they're all on social media. Did you know that globally, people spend 2 hours and 15 minutes on average on social media?
Just on social media.
And that's 2017 statistics.
That's in 2017, so that's hot off the presses.
Yeah. And
I think that can account for some level of disengagement, but here's the question. What
and that's
first?
Counting like your mom, who's not even on social media at all.
She's on social media.
Oh, she
was on Facebook. She checks us out.
Not like my mom.
Your mom's out. My
mom's out of control.
Emojis, social
I'm
media.
Move this over a little bit.
Okay, so the question is, though, is social media the cause of the disengagement, or are people on social media because they're disengaged? I think there are a lot of people at work who are on social media. But I think one of the reasons is, if you look deeper into the Gallup poll statistics, you'll find out that the highest level of engagement, here's the good news, if you can consider this good news, the highest level of disengagement among our workforce is executives and managers. So what you consider the leadership within organizations. That comes in at a whopping 38%. So think about this. If only 38% of our leaders, our executives, our managers are engaged in the workforce, is it any surprise that we only have about 33% engagement with the employees? So my point is, you've got to be more intentional about your engagement. Why does it matter? Because if you're not more intentional about your engagement, you literally are just sleepwalking through life.
So what does engagement look like?
Well, engagement looks like some level of excitement. And I don't think that you can get there unless you have very clearly defined goals and where you want to go. This is like the starting point of anything growth related is, where do you want to go? Do you have a goal?
I would agree with you on
writing right now. Did you say you would agree?
No, I would agree. I think I would agree.
Oh my gosh.
And this is not going to happen that often.
It doesn't happen that often.
I'm sort of like Eeyore.
Yeah, you're total Eeyore.
I'm the Eeyore
most people are not
of personal development.
Who Eeyore is, I think, at this stage of the game. That's from like Winnie the Pooh, way back when.
Yeah.
You tend to run a little bit more skeptical.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more negative, a little bit more skeptical.
We have very different personalities, you'll learn.
But I've struggled with this topic, even though we've been in the business for a long, long time. It's just that because I take it so personally myself, and.
Well, you're very hard on yourself. When we talk about you being critical, you're very critical of yourself. I think a vast majority of people are very, very difficult on themselves. Most.
But I would agree with that, having a goal or having an intention is really going to help set that direction, set the sail, right? Mm-hmm. Then I think one of the key aspects of this, especially in today's world, is that you have to distill down the exact information that you want to take in, because it is so overwhelming with the amount of information that's out there, including this podcast, that you're listening to it now. You have to choose wisely the information.
This is a great show to listen to if you want to distill through, because we're going to be bringing on guests and we are going to be talking about recent articles and like any kind of breaking news in the leadership and success space. So we're going to kind of dive into it. We're going to share stories of working with clients and how they've overcome obstacles. We're going to share personal stories. You're of course going to get the drama of the husband and wife team working together and disagreeing.
Yeah, and I think also, especially when we do some interviews with people, because we'll both be on doing that, is that you will always kind of talk more about the positive things that are going on. I want to find out like what's going on in their industry. What are some things that are threatening what they're going to do? And I really want to hear, because everybody in every industry at this point, because there's so many disruptors out there, so many things that are happening with technology, that you really have to be on your toes constantly and
See,
figuring
the thing
out.
is, you don't even disagree with me on this whole growth thing. There's so much going on right now with growth and technology. There's so much going on. There's so much noise out there that it's part of why we want to do this show. We want to help cut through the noise. But I want to go back to my point and wrap this up, is that it is absolutely essential that you get much more intentional about your growth, setting those personal and professional growth goals. Because here's what I can promise you. From working with executives and entrepreneurs who are already very successful, but on a growth path, they don't have any extra time on their hands. I know you don't have extra time. So you're not going to just find time for growth later. If you don't have a very specific plan for your growth, then that means you're going to start to get stagnant. And what that looks like is it starts to look like frustration. It starts to look like apathy. You know, if you're less than engaged, which by the way, most people are, like overwhelmingly, most people are disengaged. I truly believe that that has to do with a lack of a personal vision, because we've got to take personal responsibility.
So, but when you say growth, so I just want to get some clarity, and maybe you guys have the same question as well. When you say growth, is this like technical growth of a particular industry?
Could be.
Like learning on?
Could be.
Like, is it just, when you say growth, are you just talking about the wide spectrum of everything in the world that you could just take on and learn?
Well, it's different for each one of us based on where we are. When you think about the challenges that you took on last year and where you grew the most last year, what would you say is the number one area of focus for you that you really grew last year?
You know?
Yes, I know. Come on.
What is it? Is it around technical?
Yeah.
I mean, I did have to take on a lot of this and learning how to, you know, the whole Facebook Live thing, podcasting, sound systems, all of the technology of it.
Everything
Yeah, there's been a lot of breakdowns as well.
So that's the doing side, right? So there's a lot of growth related to, okay, so what's that next level skill that you want to develop, or the expertise where you want to get better and better and better in what you do in your world? But then there's also the personal side, which is, who do I need to be? Who do I need to be as a leader? First of all, it's getting to know yourself really well, your strengths and your limitations, and really find out, like, what is my next most awesome growth opportunity? What can I get a handle on, where if I could just get a handle on that, I would experience so much more success. So we're going to go into this in a lot more depth, in a lot more ways, with many of our guests, our clients, and us personally. And I certainly invite you to share this episode and tune in next week for the Evolve to Win show. It's produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine.
We love Gulf Shore Business.
We love Gulf Shore Business. And we can't wait to continue the dialogue and the conversation about growth and why you need to be so intentional these days.
And if you have questions about leadership and growth and everything that encompasses that, I will be the one that will keep questioning Heather on why we're doing these things, why it's so important. I am your person that if you're not 100% in on this whole leadership and growth thing and you have questions like I do, I will be your sounding board. I will be the one that will be asking for you. So.
All right, good. Well, you can visit us at heatherchristie.com. And until next time, have a great day.
Bye now.